I'm Bobbie Ashley. Good morning. It is currently 59 degrees at 10:11, and I've got a special guest on the phone with me, Michael Kleen. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Bobbie. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. And, of course, Michael, you are the author of the book called Tales of Coles County, Illinois, right?
Yes, that's correct. It's sort of a labor of love for me.
Now, tell us a little bit about what is in this book.
Well, really, there are two parts to the book. The first part is a collection of historical fiction stories. So they're short stories based on different events in Coles County history, like the Charleston riot, for example, the Airtight bridge murder, etc. And the second part is the legends and lore of Coles County, and that is all the ghost stories, haunted places, even ghost towns and buried treasure. Anything sort of strange and unusual about Coles County is in there.
Oh,
and
that's
then,
very cool. Well, tell me, what is your favorite story or legend or lore from Coles County?
Well, my favorite story has got to be the Airtight Bridge story, because it came to me, you know, people just said, oh, you got to check out this creepy bridge. I didn't know anything about the body that was found there in 1980, and it went from that to, you know, doing the research, putting the story together, and I actually got to speak with the victim's daughter eventually, and so I became pretty close to the case in ways that I never would have anticipated. So that kind of personal involvement really draws me to that story in particular.
And it's kind of interesting, some of the things that, you know, you find out through doing a little digging on your own.
Oh, yeah, because most of these stories, I mean, most people just know the very basic facts, you know, especially like with Ashmore Estates. Early on, people just thought it was some creepy abandoned place. A lot of kids growing up in the area didn't really know what it was. If you were born after it closed, you know, then people just thought it was some old abandoned asylum. So what I've tried to do is get the most information I can about these places and get it out there for people so they can not only enjoy the stories, but also learn a little bit about the history of their places.
And what's your opinion on Ashmore Estates? Because I know that a lot of folks around here talk about Ashmore Estates. Oh
yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable to me how much attention it's received over the last couple of years. Now, I will say that I was interviewed for the Ghost Adventure show, that episode, and they really tried to say that there were demons in Ashmore State, which is totally ridiculous. I'm not saying it's not haunted. I mean, it certainly could be haunted, but I've never felt threatened or anything in there.
Yeah, that show tends to go that direction for some reason.
I really enjoy the building, and I've always felt like it should be preserved as a historic landmark. And hopefully one day it could. I know that earlier this year it was devastated by a storm, and the roof was blown off, and I'm afraid that it's just going to continue to deteriorate. So hopefully there's a dedicated group of people that really love Ashmore Estates, and hopefully they'll save the building.
Yeah, I mean, it's because, I mean, it's the historical value on top of, you know, the haunt. I mean, yeah, it's famous for the haunt, but the historical value is something too.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think a lot of people criticize sharing ghost stories, and they think it brings a negative reputation, or, you know, it brings vandalism to cemeteries. But I think it can work in the opposite direction, where it brings people who care about these places and want to preserve them.
Absolutely. Now, you've also have done stories about different hauntings going on at Eastern Illinois University, right?
Oh, certainly. The legend of Pemberton Hall is one of the most famous stories in Illinois. I wrote a whole sort of standalone article about it that can be downloaded from my website. That one is kind of cool because it sort of takes a folklore motif, this story of the roommate's death, and kind of makes it local, you know, and incorporates Mary Hawkins, who was a real person, into the story. So anybody going to Eastern Illinois University, especially young women who live there in the dorm, everybody's heard of that story. And it's just really, it's neat to have gone to that school where, it wasn't just, go to class and party on the weekends or whatever. There was also, hey, we've got a historic building with a really well-known ghost story attached to it. It was kind of neat.
Absolutely. Do you have any stories about, like, for example, Mattoon?
There is, of course, the Mad Gasser of Mattoon, which a lot of people know about. That was in the mid-1940s. There were these strange gas attacks all over the town of Mattoon.
Oh, my goodness.
A lot of people blamed it on mass hysteria and said that, well, it was just because World War II was going on and people were afraid of gas attacks. But from what I've researched, it seems like there were legitimate attacks, that something was actually going on. And there was a book written about it where the author alleged to have found the perpetrator. Right outside of Mattoon, there is Ragdoll Cemetery by the Coles County Airport that's supposed to be haunted by a rag doll that drops down on unsuspecting trespassers.
Oh, okay. That's kind of a different ghost story, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty unique, and it's funny because sometimes people will hang a rag doll from one of the trees in the cemetery, because the story is that the doll waits up in one of the oak trees there and jumps down on you and attacks you if you come in seeking to harm the cemetery.
Goodness.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested in digging up stories that haven't been talked about in a long time. There's a home in Charleston, a very historic home that was built a little before the Civil War, and the Daily Eastern News wrote a series of articles about the owners thought it was haunted, and they were sort of promoting it as a museum and everything. And I believe that story basically was forgotten for many decades.
Oh.
And I went through the Daily Eastern News archives and pulled it up and put it in my book. So hopefully it'll preserve that for posterity.
Now, Michael, where can folks find your book and any information about any of the books that you've written?
Well, the Facebook page is real active. Just look up Tales of Coles County, Illinois on Facebook. Also, it's on Amazon.com. And if any of your listeners are in Charleston or Mattoon, the book is also being sold at the Book Nook in Mattoon and the Lincoln Bookshop in Charleston.
Okay.
And there's signed copies there people can pick up.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you sent some books to give away, and we will give those away as soon as we get them in. And thank you again for joining us. Again, check out Michael's book, Tales of Coles County, Illinois, on Amazon.com. Thank you, Michael.